Will the House please come to order? Members, we are still in orders of the day, and we will now take up H45. Member from Pulteney, can you please offer us a motion to suspend our rules to take up for immediate consideration off the notice calendar House Bill 45, which is an act relating to abusive legislation filed against survivors of domestic abuse, stalking, or sexual assault?
Motion to suspend rules to take up off the notice calendar for immediate consideration H45.
The member from Pulteney moves that we suspend our rules in order to take up House Bill 45 for immediate consideration. Are you ready for the question? If so, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed, please say nay. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it, and you have suspended our rules to take up House Bill 45 for immediate consideration. House Bill 45 is an act relating to abusive litigation filed against survivors of domestic abuse, stalking, or sexual assault. The bill passed the Senate with a proposal of amendment that is printed in today's notice calendar. The pending question is, shall the House concur in the Senate proposal of amendment? Member from Burlington.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. So I'm happy to say that the Senate's amendment is actually a technical amendment. The Senate asked that the definition of abusive litigation be reworked, which our Ledge Council did in consultation with our Chief Administrative Judge. So rather than using the definition in the original H45, which was taken out of other states' definitions that have passed or tried to pass abusive litigation legislation, this definition appears on page 3500 of today's calendar. And basically, as I said, it reads easier after the Senate asked for this change to be made. And there are 4 criteria that need to be met, which is still the same as in the original bill, but you'll see that it's sort of easier to follow. The other technical change is the definition is no longer repeated in the next section, 1182. So that also, I know, one of our members asked a question about that when we originally took up this bill many months ago. So our committee met and took a straw poll on the motion to concur with the Senate proposal of amendment, and we found it favorable by a vote of 9-0-2, and we ask for the body's support in concurring with the Senate proposal of amendment. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
The question is, shall the House concur in the Senate proposal of amendment? Are you ready for the question? If so, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed, please say nay. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it, and you have concurred in the Senate proposal of amendment. Member from Pulteney, can you please offer us a motion to suspend our rules to take up for immediate consideration off the notice calendar House Bill 157, which is an act relating to Vermont basic needs budget?
Madam Speaker, I make a motion to suspend rules to take up off the notice calendar for immediate consideration H157.
The member from Pulteney moves that we suspend our rules to take up House Bill H157 for immediate consideration. Are you ready for the question? If so, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed, please say nay. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it, and you have suspended our rules to take up House Bill 157 for immediate consideration. House Bill 157 is an act relating to the Vermont Basic Needs Budget. The bill passed the Senate with a proposal of amendment that is printed in today's notice calendar. The pending question is, shall the House concur in the Senate proposal of amendment? Member from Westminster, the member from West Windsor, sorry.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. H157, or as I like to call it, the BNB, which is the Basic Needs Budget, passed out of the House on a very late night just before crossover. And going to the Senate, a single word was added. That word is legislative. And the Senate asks that the word legislative be added before the word members in section 1. And that is, I understand, in part because the committee will be staffed by legislative staff, and so it should therefore include a legislator. Our committee, House General and Housing, concurred with this amendment in a straw poll, the vote having been 11-0-1, and we ask for your support. Thank you.
The question is, shall the House concur in the Senate proposal of amendment? Are you ready for the question? If so, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed, please say nay. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it, and you have concurred in the Senate proposal of amendment. Now we shall move to Senate Bill 39. Senate Bill 39 is an act relating to compensation and benefits for members of the Vermont General Assembly. The bill was referred to the Committee on Government Operations and Military Affairs, which recommends that the House propose to the Senate to amend the bill as printed in today's calendar. The member from South Burlington, Representative Nugent, will report for the committee. Carrying in appropriations, the bill was then referred to the Committee on Appropriations, which recommends that the bill ought to pass in concurrence with the proposal of amendment recommended by the Committee on Government Operations and Military Affairs. The member from Burlington, Representative Bloomley, will report for that committee. Please listen to the second reading of the bill.
S39, an act relating to compensation and benefits for members of the Vermont General Assembly.
Reporting for the Committee on Government Operations and Military Affairs, the member from South Burlington.
Madam Speaker, your House Government and Operations and Military Affairs Committee recommends that we concur with the Senate proposal of amendment with further proposals of amendment. I will be speaking to the underlying bill as well as the amendment. This bill starts to address one of the major impediments that prevents many qualified and talented folks from considering serving in this legislature or continuing to serve, which is low pay. As of now, legislators are paid about $811 a week, or roughly $13,000 a year. For a point of reference, median income in Vermont is about $67,000 per year, according to the US Census, roughly $1,300 a week for 50 weeks of work. When many Vermonters learn what the current pay is for legislators in our state, they are shocked, including me. Folks often ask themselves how they could possibly take care of their families or themselves with the time commitment required and such low compensation. If we do nothing to address this issue, we risk losing more members who still have more to give or failing to attract new leaders. To keep pace with Vermont's needs, we must invest in future leaders and retain existing ones. Legislative pay was formerly tied to step and COLA increases so that it would keep pace with the median weekly wage in Vermont. In 2005, however, that changed so that the pay was then only provided a COLA increase. Every year since, the median weekly wage and cost of living increases diverged more. Even so, this bill would not increase pay for those currently serving in these roles, but instead would gradually increase it for those who take their seats in 2025 to $1,000 a week and up to $1,210 in 2027. At the end of this pay increase phase-in 2027, the weekly legislative pay would still be lower than the Vermont median wage is today. S39 makes legislators eligible for the state employee healthcare coverage at the same 20% employee, 80% employer payment of premiums available to state employees today. Your House Government Operations and Military Affairs Committee amendment pushed the eligibility for healthcare coverage to 2025 to align with the pay increase. This delay will also provide time for a legislative working group to evaluate how this eligibility might impact members who currently qualify for healthcare subsidies on the exchange. Finally, and most importantly, S39 creates a legislative service working group that would convene during the 2023 off session and report back to the General Assembly on January 15th, 2024 on the structure of legislative compensation and demands. This report will review compensation and benefits, staffing, administrative support, and the length of the legislative session. This bill for me ultimately is about the many friends and colleagues I know personally who would make incredible legislators, people with experience in the areas that we make laws about, people with families, people trying to make ends meet, people who understand and face the challenges and opportunities we hear about every day. We all benefit from their experience in informing the laws that are made in Vermont. This job is only a role that I will occupy for a set period of time, dependent on many other factors, and especially on the wishes of the people in my district. This bill provides proper stewardship for Vermont's democratic processes, which is important for the very practical reason that it allows us to continue to respond to the current needs and goals of the people of Vermont. I will now walk us through the sections of the bill. The underlying bill can be found on the legislative website as passed by the Senate. The instances of amendment can be found at page 3,430 of today's calendar. Section 1 proposes to make legislators eligible for the group health insurance plans, EAP plans, and flexible spending plans that are offered to state employees. Section 2 proposes salary amounts for legislators and legislative leaders for the 2025-26 biennial session. This begins a phase-in to increase from the current amount to $1,000 a week, plus an inflationary adjuster in 2025 for all legislators, except for the Speaker and Pro Tem. Section 3 proposes to update the annual wage and weekly session wage in statute for the Speaker and Pro Tem that would go into effect at the beginning of the 2027 biennial session. Section 4 proposes to update the weekly session wage for legislators and would go into effect at the beginning of the 2027 biennial session. It also proposes a new weekly wage outside of the legislative session equal to 1/5 of the weekly session wage that would be effective on January 1st, 2025. The first instance of amendment makes it so that the off-session day of pay must be claimed by each legislator, similar to how days of pay for authorized off-session work, like service on a study committee, are reported today. It also proposes to authorize daily stipends for non-incumbent members elect to attend the new member orientation prior to the new biennium. The section also allows members to choose either per diem meals and lodging allowances or non-taxable reimbursement of actual expenses. The House amendment in the second instance reflects recommendations from the Legislative Operations to clarify how this would work and that no member may be reimbursed for expenses in excess of the per diem amount in the allowances for meals or lodging. Section 5 amends the existing statute that protects members with full-time jobs so that the protection exists as long as the candidate reports to their employer as they have been elected, after they have been elected within 14 days. Section 6 proposes to establish a legislative service working group with 3 members from each body that would convene during the 2023 off session and report back to the General Assembly on January 15th, 2024 on legislative compensation and benefits, staffing, administrative support, and the length of the legislative session. The third instance of amendment adds a new item to the items to be considered by the working group, directing them to consider the impact of the healthcare eligibility on members with different income levels. The fourth instance of amendment reduces the number of meetings from 8 to 6, which was the intention of Senate appropriations, but was inadvertently left at 8 in the as-passed version. Section 7 made a 2024 general fund appropriation to cover the healthcare eligibility the Senate had effective January 1st, 2024. We amended this in the 5th instance to delete this section. The 6th instance of amendment removed the 2024 effective date for the healthcare eligibility, which makes it effective at the same time as the legislative pay at the start of the next biennium in 2025. The House Committee on Government Operations and Military Affairs heard testimony from the Director and Chief Counsel, Office of Legislative Counsel, Director, Office of Legislative Operations, Chief Healthcare Advocate, Vermont Legal Aid, Senator, who is the reporter and sponsor of the bill, House representatives from Washington 3, Policy Specialist, Center for Legislative Strengthening, National Conference of State Legislatures. This bill and amendment passed favorably out of committee on a vote of 8-4-0, and the committee respectfully asks for your support.
And now reporting for the Committee on Appropriations, the member from Burlington.
Madam Speaker, the Committee on Appropriations thanks the Committee on Government Operations and Military Affairs for S39. There are several money-related sections of the bill. There's just one de minimis appropriation that will affect the FY24 budget. As has been described, S39 creates a legislative working group composed of 6 legislators who will meet up to 8 times between adjournment and next year's session. JFO reported to us that this expense is covered in the FY24 legislative budget that we passed. The bill proposes a plan by which legislative session weekly wages for all members will be increased over the course of 3 years, 2025, 2026, and 2027, to the point at which they are essentially equivalent to Vermont's average wage. As is currently true, annual compensation is also increased at the same rate as other constitutional officers. The bill proposes a plan by which session wages and annual compensation are increased for the Speaker and President Pro Tem. Both session and annual wage increases are phased in as outlined by the Joint Fiscal Office in its fiscal note. The fiscal note for the bill indicates the total cost of these wage increases in 2025. Total cost for increasing wages for all members, including leadership, would add $585,000 to the legislative budget. In 2026, the increase would add $1 million to the legislative budget. These are all new dollars. And by 2027, the increase would add $1.4 million to the legislative budget. As noted, the bill proposes that members may claim off-session compensation equivalent to 1/5 of the weekly compensation rates starting 2025, and that new members would be entitled to member-elect stipends to attend new member orientation at a rate of $242 per day. The estimated cost of off-session compensation for legislators is $200,000 in 2025, which is not a full year of compensation, $1.5 million in 2026, and $1.7 million in 2017. Member-elect daily compensation to attend its orientation session is estimated in 2025 at $31,000. By 2027, the cost is estimated at $40,000. And regarding member expenses for lodging and meals, the impact of changes in reimbursement policies for meals and lodging have no new fiscal impact on the budget. As has been explained, members will be given the option of accepting the taxable allowance for these costs or submitting expenses, which would not be taxed. As the fiscal note reflects, total new general fund commitments in FY 2025 would be $2.5 million in 2026, $4.1 million, and in FY 2027, total an estimated $4.8 million. It's important to note that the fiscal note figures written for the Senate and quoted here include health insurance costs, which are estimated at 1.7 million per year. The decision about that issue, of course, will be decided by the legislative committee and then later this body. On a vote of 8-4-0, your House Appropriations Committee recommended passage of the bill as amended by the House Government Operations and Military Affairs Committee, and we ask for your support.
The question is, shall the House propose to the Senate to amend the bill as recommended by the Committee on Government Operations and Military Affairs? Are you ready for the question? If so, member from Milton.
Never mind. Sorry, Madam Speaker.
The question is, shall the House propose to the Senate to amend the bill as recommended by the Committee on Government Operations and Military Affairs? Are you ready for the question? If so, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed, please say nay. Nay. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it, and you have proposed to the Senate to amend the bill. Now the member from Clarendon, Representative Peterson, offers an amendment to the House proposal of amendment that is printed in today's calendar. Member from Clarendon.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. The amendment I propose can be found on page 3433 of today's calendar. And simply, to state it simply, what it does is reduces the length of our legislative session from 18 weeks to 12 weeks. And one of the things we hear a lot, and this bill addresses the money part, the pay part, is the length of the session. People are discouraged. The anecdotal evidence is people are discouraged from running for office because of the length of time they have to stay away from home, from work, et cetera. And so what this bill, this amendment does is address the length of time would be away. Vermont is the 49th state in population. Only Wyoming has less folks. But there are 27 other states that have shorter legislative sessions than Vermont. And this amendment will put us more in line with the session length as it relates to our population. It would significantly lessen the increase in cost of the taxpayer. I did a little bit of figure, a little bit of math. At $812 a week is what we make now, or $14,616 that we make now. If you compare that to the 2025 legislative salary for 12 weeks at $1,000 a week, you're talking $12,000. So 12,000 compared to the 14,616 saves a lot of money for the taxpayer. It saves $470,000 for the taxpayer. In 2026, at a salary of $1,100 a week, we're saving $250,000, a little bit less, but that's based on what we get paid today over 18 weeks. So I feel that this amendment has merit. I think that that members should consider it very strongly, and that's the amendment. Thank you.
Member from South Burlington.
Madam Speaker, the member from Clarendon presented his amendment to the Government Operations and Military Affairs Committee this morning. This amendment would set the session length at 12 weeks, and the committee found that this amendment would unnecessarily limit the scope of the study group to consider this question later on about the length of the session. As a result, the committee voted against this amendment on a straw poll of 9-3-0 and asked the body to join them in voting no.
The question is, shall the House amend its proposal of amendment as offered by the member from Clarendon? Are you ready for the question? Member from Milton. No, member from St. Albans Town, sorry.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I stand in strong support of this amendment. I think the member brings up a really good point. One of the biggest issues for me about serving is I have to tell my employer, I'm out of work for 5 months, maybe 6 months. Who knows how long I'm going to be? This sets it in stone that we're going to have a shorter session. We know exactly when it starts and when it stops. And any kind of things that I'm struggling right now, bringing my kids to baseball practice, soccer practice, coaching 4 teams, trying to figure out, what's for dinner tonight, what time I'm going to be home. That kind of stuff it's in stone when we're going to be. Right now, as a working father at 37 years old, one of the younger people in this room, that's one of the hardest things for me to go to my employer every day and say, well, I'm going to be back. I don't know. I might be back next week. We could be back the following week. I don't know when we're going to be done, but just stay tuned. This right here, it's thoughtful. It's mindful of the Vermont taxpayers, and they know when we're going to go. And if you're planning on running for office ever, you know that you're not going to have to make such a big sacrifice by giving up 5 months of your year every 2 years. So I just want to say I support this bill, or this amendment to this bill, and I urge the body to do the same. Thank you.
Member from Burlington.
Madam Speaker, I oppose this amendment because this body has inherited what seems to be unsolvable problems from past generations that we can't even address in 5 months. I don't see how we will ever get ahead in 12 weeks. Furthermore, the executive branch functions year-round, and if the legislative branch only functions 1/4 of the year, I believe that would disturb the checks and balances of government. Thank you.
Member from Burlington.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. May I inquire of the reporter of the amendment?
The member from Clarendon is interrogated.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, how many other states have 12 weeks as a session length?
I did not hear that, member.
Madam Speaker, how many states in the country have a session that is the length of 12 weeks?
I'm not sure how many have a length that is exactly 12 weeks, but I can name off the states that have a session that's under 18 weeks.
I do not need that, Madam Speaker. Thank you. I was wondering how many have 12 weeks. Madam Speaker, what states have recently changed the length of their session?
I don't know the answer to that.
And finally, Madam Speaker, what would be the impact of the operations of the state if we were to lengthen if we were to shorten the length of our session?
I actually don't think there'll be an impact. I think that this body can work more efficiently. I think there's always a Monday that can be utilized to make a full week. And frankly, I don't think there'll be an impact.
Madam Speaker, I appreciate the member's opinion, but I'm wondering, Madam Speaker, have you spoken to any agencies, departments, folks who actually do the business of the state?
No, I have not.
Thank you, member. I thank the member. Madam Speaker, I strongly oppose this amendment, largely because the work we do today is so complex that we rush through so much policy that requires deeper thought and deeper deliberations. And I think shortening the length of the session is irresponsible. Thank you.
Member from Putney.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I rise to voice my opposition to this amendment. We're encountering a world that continues to get more complicated. And within our committee, within this body, one of the most frequent phrases that I hear is, we're rushing through this. We're not giving it enough time. And yet, at the same time, I'm hearing, well, we can take even less time. So I don't think we can go both ways with that. I believe to do the people's work, we need to be deliberate. We need to take the time that we need for each situation. And I also feel like this is something that may come up in the working group that we're trying to create. And along with that, they'll probably look at other states who might have theoretically a shorter window where they actually vote. But the reality is those states Many of them keep committees working all year long, so when they come for their session, they have completed work that they can vote on. So I think we need to take into consideration when someone says that there's a shorter time span, that those states have those committees who work year-round, and it's not quite the full piece of information that we're getting on that. So I'd like to see this maybe be considered by the working group, but I'm going to vote against this amendment.
The question is, shall the House amend its proposal of amendment as offered by the member from Clarendon? Is member from Clarendon?
Yes, Madam Speaker. When the vote's taken, I request it be taken by roll. Thank you.
The member from Clarendon requests that when the vote is taken, it be taken by roll. Is the member sustained? The member is sustained. When the vote is taken, it will be taken by roll. The question is, shall the House amend its proposal of amendment as offered by the member from Clarendon? Are you ready for the question? If so, the clerk can commence to call the roll.
Andrews of Westford. Andriano of Orwell.
2 minutes.
Will the House come to order and members kindly take their seats? I would like to remind members that we are in the middle of a roll call vote. Members and guests are prohibited from using computers, phones, or any type of an electronic device. Please refrain from the passing of notes and conversations during a roll call. And when the clerk calls your name, please answer in a loud and clear voice so the clerk can accurately record your vote. The question is, shall the House amend its proposal of amendment as offered by the member from Clarendon? Will the clerk please continue to call the roll?
Anthony of Berry City. No. Arison of Weathersfield. No. Arsenault of Williston. No. Austin of Colchester. Bartholomew of Heartland. No. Bartley of Fairfax. Beck of St. Johnsbury. No. Rebecca of Winooski. No. Byrong of Virgins. No. Black of Essex. No. Bloomley of Burlington. Bongarts of Manchester. No. Boslin of Westminster. No. Boyden of Cambridge. No. Brady of Williston. No. Brannigan of Georgia. Brennan of Colchester. No. Brown of Richmond. No. Brownell of Pownell. Brumstead of Shelburne. Burdett of West Rutland. Burke of Brattleboro. No. Burrows of West Windsor. Buss of Woodstock. Campbell of St. Johnsbury. Canfield of Fairhaven. Carpenter of Hyde Park. Carroll Bennington. Casey Montpelier. Chapin of East Montpelier. Chase of Chester. Chase of Colchester. Chestnut Tangerman of Middletown Springs. Christie of Hartford. Chena of Burlington. Clifford of Rutland City. Coffey of Guilford. No. Cole of Hartford. No. Conlon of Cornwall. No. Corcoran of Bennington. No. Cordes of Lincoln. No. Damar of Enosburg. Yes. Demereux of Corinth. No. Dickinson of St. Albans Town. I'm sorry, Dickinson of St. Albans Town. Yes. Thank you. Dodge of Essex. No. Dolan of Essex Junction. No. Dolan of Waitsfield. No. Donahue of Northfield. Durfee of Shaftesbury. Elder of Starksboro. Emmons of Springfield. Farley's Rubio of Barnet. Galfetti of Barrytown. Galfetti of Barrytown. Garifano of Essex. Goldman of Rockingham. Ghostland of Northfield. Graham of Williamstown. Granning of Jericho. Gregoire of Fairfield. Hango Berkshire. Harrison of Chittenden. Hedrick of Burlington. Higley of Lowell. Holcomb of Norwich. Hooper of Randolph. Hooper of Burlington. Houghton of Essex Junction. Howard of Rutland City. Hyman of South Burlington. James of Manchester. Jerome of Brandon. Kornheiser of Brattleboro. Krasnow, South Burlington. Lieber of Morgan. LaBounty of Linden. Lally of Shelburne. Lalonde of South Burlington. Lamont of Morristown. Lanford of Virgins. LaRush of Franklin. Levitt of Grand Isle. Lipsky of Stowe. Logan of Burlington. Long of Newfane. McGuire of Rutland City. Marcotte of Coventry. Maslin of Thetford. Matos of Milton. McCann of Montpelier. McCarthy of St. Albans City. McCoy of Pulteney. I'm sorry, McCoy of Pulteney. Thank you. McFawn of Barrytown. McGill of Bridport. Mahaly of Calais. Minier of South Burlington. Morgan of Milton. Morris of Springfield. Morrissey of Bennington. Rowicki of Putney. Mulvaney Stanek of Burlington. No. Nicole of Ludlow.
No.
Knott of Rutland City.
No.
Noyes of Wolcott.
No.
Nugent of South Burlington.
No.
O'Brien of Tunbridge. No. Odie of Burlington. No. Oliver of Sheldon. Page of Newport City.
Yes.
Pyala of Londonderry. No. Parsons of Newberry.
Yes.
Pat of Worcester.
No.
Pearl of Danville.
No.
Peterson of Clarendon. Pouch of Heinsberg. Pouch of Heinsberg. Thank you. Priestley of Bradford. Rachelson of Burlington. Rice of Dorset. Roberts of Halifax. Samps of Castleton. Sakowitz of Randolph. Shy of Middlebury. Shaw of Pittsford. Sheldon of Middlebury. Sebelia of Dover. Sims of Craftsbury. Small of Winooski. Smith of Derby. Squirrel of Underhill. Stebbins of Burlington. Stevens of Waterbury. Stone of Burlington. Supernaut of Barnard. Taylor of Milton. Taylor of Colchester. Templeman of Brownington. Toledo of Brattleboro. Tooth of St. Albans Town. Torrey of Moortown. Troiano of Stannard. Walker of Swanton. Waters Evans of Charlotte. White of Bethel. Whitman of Bennington. Williams of Berry City. Williams of Granby. Wilson of Linden. Wood of Waterbury. Andrews of Westford. Bartley of Fairfax. Brownell of Pownell. Canfield of Fairhaven.
For purpose of explanation, member from Putney.
Madam Speaker, I support your House Committee on Government Operations and Military Affairs and oppose this amendment. In a more complex world, with regular expressions in this body and committees that we move too fast, this amendment pushes us backward instead of moving us forward into the 21st century.
Member from Burlington.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I cannot, in good faith, vote for an amendment that significantly shortens Vermont's legislative session. Even if we eliminated announcements, resolutions, vote explanations, and worked Mondays and holidays, we cannot possibly do the work that needs to be done in 12 weeks. This is not the way to cut costs. These are laws we are talking about, and they affect the people of Vermont.
Member from Wethersfield.
May I explain my vote?
You may.
I voted no because 12 weeks may not be the right number. However, I urge the body to explore the right number. We're considering a pay and benefit increase to encourage people to serve, and perhaps a shorter session with a definitive end could accomplish the same.
Members, please listen to the results of your vote. Those voting yes, 34. Those voting no, 112. The nays have it, and you have declined to amend the House proposal of amendment. Now, members, the member from Chittenden, Representative Harrison, has three separate amendments. The first one is a floor amendment that the member from Chittenden will be offering in lieu of his amendment that is printed in today's calendar. The first assistant clerk emailed this amendment to members at 10:11 a.m. and is also posted on our House Overview webpage. So for that first amendment, member from Chittenden.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I don't mean to paraphrase our colleague from the Kingdom, but voting to raise our own pay is a big deal. A quick check of the annual survey of the 2022 legislative compensation from NCSL suggests they vary widely. I give you some background in terms of explaining where I'm coming from on this amendment. Our neighbors to the east in New Hampshire, as you may know, pay lawmakers $100 per year. New Mexico lawmakers do not get pay at all. Full-time New York lawmakers in 2022 received $110,000. Virginia delegates were at $17,600. There are a number of factors that should be considered in determining what is the right amount for compensation. For example, Vermont's House at 150 members is significantly larger than the average state House size of about 105. New Hampshire at 400 is an outlier. What that means, as the second smallest state in population, Vermont House members were, with the possible exception of New Hampshire, represent fewer voters per representative than any other state by far. We each represent about 4,300 residents, twice that for two-person districts. New York, by contrast, have House districts on average with 126,000 people. I share this as to point the need for the study in the bill. The revised amendment that was sent out earlier via email by our first assistant clerk does a couple things. First of all, it strikes sections 2, 3, and 4, and then reinserts the expense language that is from the bill from government operations. S39, as we know, sets up a study on what compensation and benefits should be in Section 6. Yet the bill presupposes the answer with new pay numbers for 2025, 2026, and 2027. I think we should do the study as in the bill and come back in January to review the recommendation before making changes as to what the new amounts should be. I offer this amendment in the hope of helping us all make an informed decision on compensation and not try to rush something at this late date in the session that doesn't happen until 2025 anyways. The second and third proposals of amendment basically just adjust the corresponding effective dates of the bill with the other sections taken out. In closing, Madam Speaker, I want to thank the Committee on Government Operations and Military Affairs for their time this morning and perhaps patience with me with 3 amendments. Madam Speaker, when the vote is taken, I ask that it be done by roll. Thank you.
The member from Chittenden requests that when the vote is taken, it be taken by roll. Is the member sustained? The member is sustained. When the vote is taken, it will be taken by roll. Member from South Burlington.
Madam Speaker, the member from Chittenden presented his amendment to the committee this morning. This amendment would eliminate the salary increases included in the bill, and the committee found that this amendment would perpetuate the conditions that the bill seeks to improve. The committee voted against in a vote of 3-9-0 and asked the body to also vote no on this amendment.
The question is, shall the House amend its proposal of amendment as offered by the member from Chittenden? Member from Northfield.
Madam Speaker, may I interrogate the presenter of the amendment from the Committee on Government Operations and Military Affairs?
The member from South Burlington is interrogated.
Madam Speaker, I heard at the end the various witnesses who testified in the committee, and I'm wondering which of those or what testimony was taken in selecting what the amounts of the increases should be at the various points in time.
Madam Speaker, the House Committee of Government Operations and Military Affairs considered the work that was done in the Senate as well as the witnesses that came to our committee. And part of that work was considering the way increases were considered before and including that in the assessment of this bill.
Madam Speaker, if I could just ask for maybe a little clarification. Apart from what was already proposed in the Senate, what witnesses did the committee hear from specific to the question of the appropriate amount that would be included in the increased compensation?
Oh, sorry. We heard from the NCSL folks and also the presenter of the Senate bill.
And was apart from the Senate bill, was the testimony that you heard directly from NCSL, did they make a recommendation that this would be the appropriate increase to bring us in line with other states, for example?
Madam Speaker, I will yield to the member from St. Albans City.
The member from South Burlington yields to the member from St. Albans City.
Madam Speaker, the NCSL is a nonpartisan organization that can provide a lot of information, and what they provided to us was a comparative, in-depth look in multiple reports and studies to inform our consideration of how Vermont fits in. It's a little difficult to compare states. As we heard in some of the debate about a previous amendment, there are states that have shorter sessions. There are states that have their committees meet all year but have really short voting sessions. There are states that have fully professional legislatures versus hybrid. So NCSL provided us an enormous amount of information about what other states do, and that allowed us to, find that this was in line with similar states in many ways.
So, Madam Speaker, if that information was reviewed in depth by the committee and based on in-depth information and multiple studies by NCSL, why is the study committee going to be addressing specifically a comparison to other state legislatures?
Madam Speaker, we heard from the reporter of the bill from the Senate that the Senate had largely considered where we would have been in terms of what our compensation would have been had we sort of stayed with the increases that were on track with the policy from 2 decades ago. And that was in large part coupled with some of the comparative analysis that we looked at, why we felt that the number that the Senate came up with was a good first start. The conversations we had in our committee were really about how even this is still going to be below the average weekly compensation for the median income, or excuse me, the median compensation for Vermonters. And so we felt that this was a step in the right direction that would be at least a help to solve the problem. But the work of the Legislative Service Working Group that's envisioned in S39 would fit not just the pay and the potential for health benefits, but all of the compensation and benefits that might allow us to have a more diverse and representative body here.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. This is the first time I heard reference to a study or review of how these compared to median income in the state. Where did that information come from? What witnesses provided that information?
We had just looked at the census numbers that came up in our committee discussion. And it was a point of discussion in our conversation with the Senate reporter in testimony.
So there wasn't direct testimony from anyone outside membership of the committee and looking at census records, is that correct?
No, there was not.
Okay. I thank the member. Madam Speaker, there are a few members of this body still here who were present the last time that we did a fairly significant increase from what had been the previously existing compensation levels. Don't remember the exact year. I think it was roughly 2005 or 2007, somewhere in that range. I think what's important to understand in comparison is that that was based on commissioning and seeking a consultant report that did the kind of in-depth review that maybe our constituents would expect in terms of assessing and identifying what would be an appropriate level, considering things like median income and considering the very dynamic, different categories of reimbursements in other states. When we adopted that, Madam Speaker, we also adopted an automatic inflationary factor by tying it directly to state employees. And just a few years ago, that inflation index was increased by making it equivalent to constitutional officers. So another additional increase. But in other words, it was built in with the same cost of living increase as our state employees get, based on a very in-depth outside consultant, independent review of those factors. Madam Speaker, I think this amendment speaks to the fundamental problem with this bill, is that we're suggesting an internal study, so to speak. It's not any kind of external consultant review that makes it hands-off from the members of this body, many of whom will be returning in the future or expect to. But it's an internal study that happens after we pass the increases that are proposed in this bill. So if we pass these and the study suddenly reveals that it's overstated, it would mean we would have to repeal this bill and institute something new rather than simply wait for gathering that information. I sort of feel like saying, here we go again. Let's act first and fact find later. So, Madam Speaker, I think that the amendment offered by the member from Chittenden precisely approaches this important topic and valid topic. I think the issues raised are valid ones. Are we ensuring that this is an accessible opportunity for Vermonters through the compensation levels? I think it's a very valid issue to look at. I don't think it's something that should remain within a couple of legislative committees with a couple of days of testimony without in-depth review of the multiple factors involved, all of which a study committee could at least bring in that kind of testimony, even though it's not an outside consultant. We could then make an informed decision next year in plenty of time for the intended implementation. There's absolutely no need whatsoever to pass these actual rates currently when we have a study committee that is going to review those issues. So, Madam Speaker, I strongly endorse and support the amendment offered by the member from Chittenden.
The question is, shall the House amend its proposal of amendment as offered by the member from Chittenden? Member from Burlington.
Madam Speaker, had I had more time, I would have pulled up a report that my intern, my first year, wrote along with my fellow representative from Burlington. And in that report, and I'll be happy to share it with the body, she reviewed the number of studies that have already occurred on this very topic. I believe it's anywhere between 3 to 5 studies, some of them, 40 to 50 pages long. So this conversation has been going on for quite some time, and I'll be happy to share that with the full body if folks want it. Thank you.
The question is, shall the House amend its proposal of amendment as offered by the member from Chittenden? Are you ready for the question, member from Chittenden?
Yes, Madam Speaker, I really think this amendment is a step forward. We don't know if the numbers that are in the bill for compensation in 2025, 2026, 2027 are the right numbers or not. Why do a study on compensation if we already presuppose we know the answer and put them in the bill. If we come back in January with options, recommendations, we have plenty of time to enact a new bill, and I suspect we will be doing a bill from other recommendations, maybe the pay as well, next session. So I can't for the life of me understand why we wouldn't do our homework first before we actually vote on what those pay should be for the next biennium and thereafter. Thank you.
Member from Northfield. I thought you said.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. May I interrogate the reporter of the amendment? Oh, I'm sorry, the reporter of the bill.
The member from South Burlington is interrogated.
Madam Speaker, there was just reference made to a number of previous studies that have already been done on this issue, as well as a report of an intern that I guess cited those studies. And Madam Speaker, I'm wondering, did the committee review those prior studies?
The committee was, Madam Speaker, the committee was made aware of those prior studies and the results from which were used, the results of which were used to create the bill that is S39.
Madam Speaker, when you say were used to create S39, do you mean from the other body, or was it the basis for this committee's actions and selections for proposal?
Yes, that all formed the basis for this committee's action and proposal.
So the committee reviewed the results of, could the members say how many studies? There was a reference to a number of studies. Reviewed the results of all of those studies as part of choosing what the basis should be of the salary levels.
Madam Speaker, I'm sorry, but I feel that I just answered that question. Could you possibly repeat, could the member repeat the question?
Madam Speaker, I apologize. I gave it as sort of a two-part question. I guess I'm a little confused, Madam Speaker, because previously my understanding was that the proposed increased salary levels were based on what came over from the Senate. And I'm trying to clarify when the member said that the study outcomes were the basis for building the bill in the House committee. I'm trying to align those two things. Were the study outcomes what led the committee to choose the salary levels that are proposed by the House?
Madam Speaker, we took into account the work that was done by our Senate colleagues, as well as the work that was done in our committee and the work that has been done in years before in making our decision and our recommendation.
Let me try, Madam Speaker, to ask it in a different way. Did the committee review the specific studies that the member is referencing in its choices about what salary levels would be appropriate to put in the bill that the House is being presented with?
Madam Speaker, we've reviewed the information that I have mentioned previously and rely on the good work of our colleagues and previous researchers to inform that decision.
So, Madam Speaker, could the member cite those researchers?
Member from Heartland, what is your point of order?
This line of interrogation is starting to sound more like an interrogation rather than trying to gain information.
Can I see everyone?
It's sounding more when I'm trying to say it sounds like an interrogation rather than a cross-examination rather than interrogation.
Can I see you at the podium, please? The House will stand in recess. Member from Heartland. Member from Heartland, I find your point of order not well taken. The rules do allow some flexibility and asking a question a different way to get the answer. I think at the podium, we did figure out where we may be able to break through and get some more information on this. So with that, member from St. Albans City.
So, Madam Speaker, the information that came over from the Senate included a very detailed fiscal note. The numbers in that were based on the mean wage and an analysis of the mean wage and an attempt to go back to the fix that legislative salary was made to the Vermont mean wage as reported by the Department of Labor, and then project that out based on pay act increases. So we have that data up until 2021, and Legislative Counsel and the Joint Fiscal Office drafted the original underlying bill based on those 2021 numbers going out to 2024 and beyond to come up with the policy recommendation. In our trying to contextualize that, we looked at a number of things. We looked at NCSL provided us with a number of documents, and we also had a conversation about the Rules Committee's work, where we had discussed a survey that was done last biennium, and the work of the Rules Committee that the member from South Burlington may have been alluding to in her comments. I will fully admit that the numbers seem so reasonable based on the mean wage and the median income as reported by the Department of Labor and the U.S. Census, that we didn't feel it necessary in the committee to belabor the point by delving further into to data and reports. But the general conversation in the House Committee on Government Operations and Military Affairs was that even if we get legislative pay up to what the Senate had proposed, that we're still going to be behind the average typical income of most Vermonters, and there will still be barriers to the service that we would hope that people would be able to engage in here without having to be solely thinking about their finances. So I hope that clears up where the information came from for the member from Northfield.
The question is, shall the House amend its proposal of amendment as offered by the member from Chittenden, member from Northfield?
Thank you, Madam Speaker. If I could just ask one follow-up to the helpful presentation that was just made about the studies or data that was looked at.
The member from St. Albans City is interrogated.
Is the report from Joint Fiscal that assessed the median income and the connection to the increases over, I think it was referenced 2 decades. I can't exactly recap how you described it, but is that full report with those median income figures available on the committee's website?
It's the basis for the fiscal note.
I'm sorry, I missed hearing that.
It is the basis for the fiscal note for S39.
What is it that's the basis for the fiscal note, Madam Speaker?
The Joint Fiscal Office's work and analysis of the mean wage.
So if we look at the fiscal note, Madam Speaker, we will see that information that the member referenced about the median wage and its increases?
No, Madam Speaker, the fiscal note will not show all of the mean wage information. You would have to go to the Department of Labor data that the Joint Fiscal Office, I believe, used in order to inform the bill.
So that information is not a report or anything you received in the committee and would not. I guess you've answered that question. Thank you. That it's not available directly to the body. I thank the member. Madam Speaker, I think if nothing else, the challenges in trying to sort out the basis for the numbers and the report of multiple studies and yet a very brief amount of review time actually in the committee. It does seem there was an extensive reliance on work that was done by the other body, and none of it involved the kind of specific outside consultant or in-depth review of our data and information in the way that we did it last time we took this information up. I think that we put all of our credibility at risk when we take a leap like this on our own, and that simple common sense would say, put the time into it with a study group that's already in the bill and have that group come back and make its recommendations as the basis to then have this body vote on something based on more complete information that we can use to explain and show to our constituents about the validity of it before we put them in place. It does not cause any delay in the timeline that's proposed by the committee to follow this recommended amendment offered by the member from Chittenden, and to simply defer the actual institution of that new pay scale until the work of the working committee that's created in the bill has taken place. I can't think of a more classic case of putting a cart before a horse. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
The question is, shall the House amend its proposal of amendment as offered by the member from Chittenden, member from St. Albans City?
Madam Speaker, the Joint Fiscal Office has provided info that was available as of in March, and has been posted under, I believe, on the Senate side, showing that the Vermont median wage and the Vermont mean wage as of 2021 that formed kind of the basis for this was $1,066.35. In many cases, it's important for us to study before we take any action. Here, in the underlying bill, we want to make some progress in the course of this bill and study comprehensively what a package of benefits and compensation really should be for future General Assemblies to be as representative as we want them to be. I'd ask the body to support the committee's work and vote no on the amendment.
The question is, shall the House amend its proposal of amendment as offered by the member from Chittenden, member from Chittenden?
Thank you, Madam Speaker. This line of inquiry has been very helpful to me, something I probably should have checked before. So I went to the committee's webpage, and there is a 12-page PowerPoint presentation from NCSL, which basically gives ranges and whatnot. It's all over the place. And there is the joint fiscal note, which we had also reviewed in appropriations, which is essentially a summary of the bill and what it costs. So again, I think the studies that have been alluded to, maybe they're out there, they should be reviewed. I don't know what the Senate did. That information is not on the committee webpage. And I would urge members of the body to support the amendment. Let's do our work, our homework, and then come back in January and vote on it. It doesn't take effect until 2025 anyhow. Thank you.
The question is, shall the House amend its proposal of amendment as offered by the member from Chittenden? Are you ready for the question? If so, will the clerk please call the roll?
Andrews of Westford. Andriano of Orwell.
2 minutes. Will the House please come to order and members kindly take their seats? Will the House please come to order? Members, I would like to remind you that we are in the middle of a roll call vote. Members and guests are prohibited from using computers, phones, or any type of an electronic device. Please refrain from the passing of notes and conversations during a roll call. And when the clerk calls your name, please answer in a loud and clear voice so that the clerk can accurately record your vote. The question is, shall the House amend its proposal of amendment as offered by the member from Chittenden? Will the clerk please continue to call the roll?
Anthony of Berry City. No. Arison of Weathersfield. No. Arsenault of Williston. No. Austin of Colchester. Bartholomew of Heartland. No. Bartley of Fairfax. Beck of St. Johnsbury. Rebecca of Winooski. Byrong of Virgins. No. Black of Essex. No. Bloomley of Burlington. Bongarts of Manchester. No. Boslin of Westminster. No. Boyden of Cambridge. Boyden of Cambridge. No. Brady of Williston. Brannigan of Georgia. Yes. Brennan of Colchester. Yes. Brown of Richmond. No. Brownell of Pownell. Brumstead of Shelburne. Burdett of West Rutland. I'm sorry, Burdett of West Rutland. Thank you. Burke of Brattleboro. No. Burrows of West Windsor. No. Buss of Woodstock. No. Campbell of St. Johnsbury. No. Canfield of Fairhaven. Yes. Carpenter of Hyde Park. No. Carroll Bennington. No. Casey of Montpelier. No. Chapin of East Montpelier. No. Chase of Chester. Chase of Colchester. No. Chestnut Tangerman of Middletown Springs. No. Christie of Hartford. Yes. Chena of Burlington. No. Clifford of Rutland City. Yes. Coffey of Guilford. No. Cole of Hartford. No. Conlon of Cornwall. No. Corcoran of Bennington. No. Cordis of Lincoln. Damar of Enosburg. Demereux of Corinth. No. Dickinson of St. Albans Town. Yes. Dodge of Essex. No. Dolan of Essex Junction. No. Dolan of Waitsfield. No. Donahue of Northfield. Yes. Durfee of Shaftesbury. Elder of Starksboro. Emmons of Springfield. No. Farley's Rubio of Barnet. No. Galfetti of Berrytown. Garifano of Essex. No. Goldman of Rockingham. No. Ghostland of Northfield. No. Graham of Williamstown. No. Granning of Jericho. No. Gregoire of Fairfield. Yes. Hango of Berkshire. Yes. Harrison of Chittenden. Yes. Hedrick of Burlington. No. Higley of Lowell. Yes. Holcomb of Norwich. No. Hooper of Randolph. No. Hooper of Burlington. Houghton of Essex Junction. No. Howard of Rutland City. No. Hyman of South Burlington. No. James of Manchester. No. Jerome of Brandon. No. Kornheiser of Brattleboro. No. Krasnow of South Burlington. No. Labor of Morgan. No. LaBounty of Linden. No. Lally of Shelburne. No. Lalone of South Burlington. Lamont of Morristown. Lanford of Virgins. LaRush of Franklin. Levitt of Grand Isle. Lipsky of Stowe. Logan of Burlington. Long of Newfane. McGuire of Rutland City. Marcotte of Coventry. Maslin of Thetford. Matos of Milton. McCann of Montpelier. McCarthy of St. Albans City. McCoy of Pulteney. McFawn of Berrytown. McGill of Bridport. Mahaly of Calais. Minier of South Burlington. Morgan of Milton. Morris of Springfield. Morrissey of Bennington. Rowicki of Putney. Mulvaney Stanek of Burlington. Nicole of Ludlow. Knott of Rutland City. Moise of Woket. Nugent of South Burlington. O'Brien of Tunbridge. Odie Burlington. Oliver of Sheldon. Page of Newport City. Payala of Londonderry. Parsons of Newberry. Pat of Worcester. Perla Danville. Peterson of Clarendon. Pouch of Heinsberg. Priestley of Bradford. Rachelson of Burlington. Rice of Dorset. Roberts of Halifax. Samus of Castleton. Sakowitz of Randolph. Shy of Middlebury. Shaw of Pittsford. Sheldon of Middlebury. Sibylla of Dover. I'm sorry, Sibylla Dover. Thanks. Sims of Craftsbury. Small of Winooski. Smith of Derby. Squirrel of Underhill. Stevens of Burlington. Stevens of Waterbury. Stone of Burlington. Supernant of Barnard. Taylor of Milton. Taylor of Colchester. Templeman of Brownington. Tolino of Brattleboro. Toof of St. Albans Town. Torrey of Moortown. Troyano of Stannard. Walker of Swanton. Waters Evans of Charlotte. White of Bethel. Whitman of Bennington. Williamsbury City. Williams of Granby. Wilson of Linden. Wood of Waterbury. Andrews of Westford. Brownell of Pownell. Cordes of Lincoln. Elder of Starksboro. Pearl of Danville. Samus of Castleton. And Wood of Waterbury.
Madam Speaker,
Member from Hartford.
may I change my vote?
You may.
Christie of Hartford.
No.
Thank you.
Member from Barrytown.
Madam Speaker, may I explain my vote?
You may.
Madam Speaker, so often in this chamber, amendments are struck down for a lack of study. Today, we have an amendment that proposes to study before we implement policy. But alas, it came from the wrong side.
Members, please listen to member from Waterbury.
Madam Speaker, may I vote?
You may.
Wood of Waterbury.
Members, please listen to the results of your vote. Those voting yes, 40. Those voting no, 104. The nays have it, and you have declined to amend the House proposal of amendment. Now for his second amendment, the member on the calendar, the member from Chittenden.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I promise this one will be a little easier, I think. The amendment can be found on page 3433 of today's calendar. It's very simply adds one more purpose to the study that we've been talking about in section 6. It asked a working group to come up with options on how we might assign future adjustments to legislative compensation to an independent entity. I understand some states do this now, but I, quite frankly, have not gathered information on how they do it and whether it would fit for us. It does not bind the legislature to make any changes, but something we could consider next year along with any other recommendations the group may have. Thank you.
Member from South Burlington.
I apologize. Madam Speaker, could the member from Chittenden repeat the title of his amendment?
One moment.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Sorry. Oh, okay. Thank you. Apologies. Madam Speaker, the member from Chittenden presented his amendment to the Government Operations and Military Affairs Committee this morning. This amendment would require the study committee created by the bill to also consider utilizing an independent study group to carry out the study of the legislative compensation. This has been done in other states as they periodically review how they compensate their legislature. The committee found that this would be a positive addition to the bill, and we voted in favor of it 11-1-0 and asked for your support.
The question is, shall the House amend its proposal of amendment as offered by the member from Chittenden? Are you ready for the question? If so, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed, please say nay. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it, and you have amended the House proposal of amendment. And now for the third amendment on the calendar, the member from Chittenden.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I don't advise offering 3 amendments to a committee. I woke up during the night in a deep sweat because I was afraid that if they voted all 3 down, it would be, you're out of here, strikeout. This amendment can be found on page 3434 of today's calendar. As we all know, the cost of health insurance is significant. The annual cost for a state share of a family plan is between $27,000 and $33,000 annually, depending on the plan that you choose. This benefit, while important, this benefit alone potentially dwarfs the legislative pay we currently receive. The amendment strikes subsection little a 2, capital B, and subdivision 2, Roman numeral 2, in its entirely and inserting, section 1, inserting in lieu thereof a new subsection little 2, Roman numeral 2. The new subdivision allows members to be eligible for the state health plan at the standard 20% employee share for the months the General Assembly is in regular session, which is typically January to May. If a member wishes to continue with the health plan following the regular session, the member would be responsible for 100% of the premium, not the taxpayers. As I said, I recognize health insurance is a valuable benefit. Nonetheless, this amendment just limits the normal 20% employee share to when we are in session. I realize the earlier government operations amendment delays the health insurance effective date until 2025. So if next year's legislator wanted to make further changes to this, they could. So again, I think it's a reasonable addition to the health insurance, but it's not the state paying 80% for the whole year. Thank you.
Member from South Burlington.
Madam Speaker, the member from Chittenden presented his amendment to our committee this morning. This amendment would change the eligibility for legislators to access healthcare benefits in S39 so that instead of having access to the state employee plan year-round with a relatively affordable 20/80 premium split, the premium would be 100% on the member in the off session. The committee found that this would likely be unaffordable and undermine the intent of S39 to increase access to legislative service. We voted to find it unfavorable on a vote of 8-3-1 and asked the body to vote no on this amendment.
The question is, shall the House amend its proposal of amendment as offered by the member from Chittenden? Are you ready for the question? If so, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed, please say nay. Nay. The nays appear to have it. The nays do have it, and you have declined to amend the House proposal of amendment. Now the question is, shall the bill be read a third time? Are you ready for that question? Member from Pittsford.
Madam Speaker, when the member from the Appropriations Committee was presenting her report, she she informed us of a whole bunch of costs and numbers and potential what could be or could not be. I was wondering if I could inquire of the member from Burlington.
The member from Burlington is interrogated.
Madam Speaker, thank you for the information, but I couldn't keep up with you. And I was wondering if you had maybe just a total of all the numbers that potentially could all come together at the end of the process.
Yes, Madam Speaker, I apologize for rushing my numbers. The fiscal note totals reflect total new general fund commitments in FY 2025 of $2.5 million, 2026, $4.1 million, and FY 2027, $4.8 million. And it is important to note that in those figures, health insurance, because this was a fiscal note prepared for the Senate committee, it includes insurance costs. So, and as I said, that those are estimated at $1.7 million per year. That issue will be decided by the committee that will meet after this session.
And Madam Speaker, just to confirm, I think I heard 2.5 million in 2025, 4.0 or 4.1 million in 26, and 4.8 in 27.
Yes, Madam Speaker.
Thank you very much.
The question is, shall the bill be read a third time? Are you ready for the question? Member from Burlington.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I rise to support this bill. It's about time that we finally have this conversation to really address the realities that face people who are serving in today's legislature in Vermont. Right now, we have an inequitable and broken system that necessitates people who are coming from working backgrounds to work another second job while serving in the legislature. This creates an inability to do either job very well, either during, on, or off the session. This also requires legislators to subsidize the low pay that we get as legislators by hopefully having a partner, a spouse, a roommate, someone else to help make sure there's additional income in your house in order to survive the high cost of living in this state. Also, health insurance is an issue that we need to solve on another day on a larger scale. However, it also requires legislators who serve to be reliant on a partner or subsidized health insurance, especially if you have children in your household. Otherwise, serving in this body is frankly an irresponsible choice because it offers no health insurance and such low pay. This also requires, as someone like myself, for example, who has young children to serve in this body, it requires a reliance on your partner or extended village and people to support you in childcare duties of young children. Otherwise, it'd be completely, again, irresponsible and logistically impossible and prohibitive to serve as a legislator in this body. What this means is that we start to curtail the faces, the experiences, the skills, the people who are able to serve in this body. We have an opportunity in front of us to look at modernizing how we compensate legislators in Vermont. We can expand the possibility for more working people to be in this body. We can hear from people's firsthand experiences on what it's like with the workforce challenges, with the realities of trying to open small businesses, et cetera, if we are able to open up our minds and to make this body a more inclusive space. This work that we're asked to do, I'm now in my second term, the work we are asked to do is only growing in its complexities, in the intersectional nature of the policies we're trying to work from committee to committee. And this requires deep thinking. It requires deep work that half the time takes place outside the session. And right now that is all unpaid labor. I can't think of a job or a circumstance where we would ask people to do unpaid labor and to such an important degree that is about the future of our state, that's about the laws we create impacting all Vermonters, and then not pay people for that time and expertise they're offering. So at the end of the day, we ask people to choose economics over public service, and we're missing out on the best and brightest Vermonters who could be serving in this body. We're also making sure that people who have certain demographics that are already making it hard for them to serve, given their identities, so queer people, people of color, et cetera, that we have struggled as this body to support in other ways, we're making it even harder for those folks to put their hand up and say, yes, I will run and serve in the legislature. Because why would they come and serve in this body if it economically created more strain on their families and livelihoods? Is it really worth it to serve in the Vermont legislature? Today, we have a chance with S39 to make it worth it and to have a future legislature that truly represents the state of Vermont. Thank you.
Member from Barrytown.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I believe the greatest hurdle to service is time commitment. The length of the session prevents citizens, both young and middle-aged, from being able to serve. As a business owner who works on the front lines of her painting company, I know this problem intimately. If I were able to return to work in 3 months as opposed to 5, I would be able to manage the demands of the legislature and my business with far greater success. Madam Speaker, I would like to draw attention to the fact that the reason given to strike down amendments and bills in this chamber is that testimony is incomplete. This bill's hurried passage is a perfect example of this phenomena. A bill so weighty as this should not be passed with all of the consequences, both intended and unintended, established, all of the options explored, and all of the financial costs examined. For these reasons, I will not be supporting this bill.
The question is, shall the bill be read a third time? Member from Berry City.
Madam Speaker, I rise in support of S39. S39 grants those who cannot now access these halls of power a voice. It allows some the capacity to serve when otherwise they could not afford to do so. Our democracy thrives when we ask both the 18-year-old and the 70-year-old, and in some cases the 16-year-old, why? What do you think? What is the answer to this problem? Madam Speaker, for those of us here who must work 2 or more jobs in order to stand alongside you, who live paycheck to paycheck just to be here, we often cannot devote ourselves wholly to this work when we could otherwise, due to time or resources or a perceived conflict of interest. We ask your leave to serve, we ask your leave so that future generations of this body can serve, can afford to serve. And indeed, S39 is part of a grander puzzle. It nestles and fits alongside better health care and a host of other supports that all persons in this state deserve. All persons in Vermont must have to thrive. Madam Speaker, if this body is to be a mirror of our communities, let us be an accurate one. Thank you.
The question is, shall the bill be read a third time? Member from Calais.
Madam Speaker, I am an unfortunate example of why I support this bill. When my wonderful predecessor, Janet Ansell, decided to retire, she and I canvassed our 3 jurisdictions looking for a good young person to run. And we heard again and again, we can't because I can't afford it. And frankly, most importantly, I don't have anyone to buy the health insurance for me. The health insurance was as important as the salary. And so here I am on a retired person on Medicare. I support this bill.
The question is, shall the bill be read a third time? Member from Milton.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I find it unconscionable that we as a body are here talking about a pay raise for ourselves when we can't even take up for consideration the bill that would give tax relief to my retired sisters and brothers in uniform that I had to send into harm's way. I'll be voting no.
Member from Lowell.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. This is an interesting one for me. One reason is I've heard from my constituents over the years that I'm not worth half of what I get paid for what I accomplish down here. So I guess there's 2 ways to look at that. Madam Speaker, I'm not alone in referencing Article 7 of the Vermont Constitution. It's the Common Benefits Clause. It's in our Declaration of Rights section of our Constitution. And may I read from that, Madam Speaker?
You may.
That government, that's us, that government is or ought to be instituted for the common benefit, protection, and security of the people, nation, or community, and not for the particular emolument or advantage of any single person, family, or set of persons who are part only of that community. I think that section speaks specifically to us as the government, allowing ourselves a particular health care benefit that so many other Vermonters don't have. Madam Speaker, other things that I feel important to speak on is when the Senate came in and testified on S-17, the sheriff's bill, one of the first things it talked about was no other organization in the state of Vermont could give itself a raise in bonuses as did the Caledonia County Sheriffs. Madam Speaker, we've done just that. There's so much here that I understand that there's some issues, but everybody should go into this knowing what the benefits are, what the time commitment is, and whether or not they can do that. For us, without a study in advance to go down this road, I think is certainly irresponsible. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
The question is, shall the bill be read a third time? Member from Montpelier.
Madam Speaker, I spent almost a decade in this building representing state employees, frontline workers who are blue collar, such as correctional officers, BGS custodians, AOT truck drivers. They knew more about state government than I'll ever learn. And I thought it was unfortunate because of the economic barriers that existed, they could never throw their hat in for office. No member of this body ever got rich serving, and nobody will after this bill passes if it does. But I really think it is unfortunate for this state that somebody who pushes a mop or shovels gravel for a living is excluded from this body. And I think it's hard to call us a citizen legislature until they do. So I will support this bill. I think we really need to make sure that we look like the people we represent. Thank you.
Member from Hyde Park.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I stand in support of S39 because it is a step in the right direction, and it is needed now. We are already losing good people. The reason that I am able to stand in here in the House today is because a talented legislator had to step out of her position. Representative Donnelly made the difficult choice between doing a job she loved and was good at, and the demands of raising a young family. Her reasons for leaving were multifaceted, but one key piece she shared with me was the financial pressure. My yes vote today is to help support future legislators. It's not a race for myself or others. This is the people's house, and all Vermonters should have the opportunity to serve. It should not be predicated on wealth and privilege. Thank you.
Member from Bennington.
Madam Speaker, a Vermonter's service in elected office should be determined by their ability to be elected by their constituents, not their inability to swing it financially. Each of us represents, as was mentioned earlier, districts of roughly 4,000 people, or double that if it's a 2-seat district. Now imagine for a moment that you've got all those 4,000 people in front of you, say in an auditorium, and you asked all of them, who's interested in serving in the legislature? Now, probably the vast majority of them would say, not for me, and walk out at that moment. But who would remain? Think about the people in our communities who do want to serve. Next, you tell them, great, but it's important for you to know, if you have a job, you'll need to take off about 5 months of the year, 3 months of the year. Now who's left over? Maybe people who don't need a job because they're retired or independently wealthy. Maybe some entrepreneurs with flexible hours. But maybe a handful of working class Vermonters who work a full-time job and they say, this really matters to me. I'm gonna find a way to make it work. Then you go on to tell them, the weekly pay is about 2/3, 3/4 of the average median income. You get one unpaid week in the middle of the session for town meeting week. And around that time of year, you might have to work 12, 14-hour days, depending on how the debate goes. Oh, and you don't get health insurance or a retirement plan. By this time, Madam Speaker, of those 4,000 constituents, you may be speaking to an empty room. Now, Madam Speaker, I want to ask each member here to think of somebody in your community who would do a great job as a legislator, but you know that they can't make it work because of finances or logistics. The purpose of our House of Representatives is to represent our constituents, and yet the very structure of our legislative compensation filters out so many potential candidates. And as with so many of the sectors that we as the legislature have an influence on, we know that without competitive wages, any organization will struggle to recruit qualified people. And I know of so many people in my community who would make great legislators, but the thought of them taking a substantial pay cut in part explains to me why they haven't been interested in serving. This past year, for example, I was truly disappointed when I ran unopposed for re-election. I thought to myself, this is a democracy. Shouldn't people want to participate? And then I think, well, if we designed our legislative compensation with the goal of making it accessible to our constituents, maybe our constituents might start literally giving us a run for our money. I think most Vermonters assume that the selection process for serving in an elective office is limited to things like a candidate's experience, their relationship with their community, their ability to problem solve or participate on a team. But in reality, too many Vermonters are excluded from serving in the legislature because of their ability to afford being a state representative. And I think that's just bad design for a democracy. I ask the body to vote yes.
The question is, shall the bill be read a third time? Member from Burlington.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I rise in support of the bill. People have talked about a shorter session making us more productive. When I look at the 50 bills that are on the wall in House Government Operations and Military Affairs, I fear that that would not be the case. And I also fear that it would have Ledge Counsel, who does most of the work for us, running out the door. Although, as I look out the window, I also don't see how anybody could not think it was at least an idea worth considering. Many Vermonters are barred by economic situations from participating in this body and our deliberations. Our Constitution demands that when we violate one of those laws, we will be judged by a jury of our peers. How then can we not consider ourselves derelict of our duty when we do not try to remove those participation bars from the body that actually makes those laws? All Vermonters deserve to sit here. Thank you.
Member from Chittenden.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. So many things that we do in this body are about choosing priorities. As was mentioned earlier, the fiscal note suggests that when the bill is fully implemented, it's about $5 million annually. It's $5 million we spend on ourselves, and I realize it's future bienniums, but let's face it, majority of incumbents run again, and the majority of incumbents are reelected. $5 million, what can you do with $5 million? We heard about the military pensions that's been kind of bantered about in one form or another. We did a little tiny piece a few years ago or last year, but you know, that was, I don't know, $3.5 million to make those exempt like most states. Vermont's one of the few states that taxes our Social Security benefits on our seniors. This $5 million wouldn't cover that, but it might allow us to, you know, increase the income threshold a little bit more so those that need help in not paying some taxes could do so. We heard the other day through the news reports that our income tax receipts were down significantly in April. 1 month doesn't make a trend, but it was significant, and April is a big month when you're looking at income taxes. I hope that was an anomaly, but if it is not, and we're headed to tougher economic times, this $5 million is going to be very, very important in some of our spending decisions and what we do going forward, or we just raise taxes more, which is not the route that I would prefer to do. Madam Speaker, I've been serving as a legislator for, I don't know, 6 years now, a little bit more. Maybe my situation's different. I understand that we all come from different walks of life. I have never looked at this as a job. It's public service, and I am honored to serve my district and the people who sent me here each and every day. And I don't want to ever see this as a full-time career path. We are the 49th largest state in terms of population. We have a almost 50% larger than the average House chamber in terms of numbers. We can't do everything that we would like to do. As I had said before, I had hoped that we would do the study, do our homework, find out what made sense, but we didn't choose to go that path. Madam Speaker, I will be voting no on S39. Thank you.
The question is, shall the bill be read a third time? Member from Burlington.
Madam Speaker, may I quote Dr. Mohammed Abdel-Ghani?
You may.
Now that you have taken the public oath, you need to take an oath to yourself, an oath to commit to serve your constituents with integrity, especially the needy and those who are usually not heard. That quote is from my father, a proud Egyptian immigrant who immigrated here in the 70s as a Fulbright scholar and ended up staying here as his country broke into a civil war after his immigration. He has dedicated his life to service, and at the ripe age of 83, he continues to serve as a professor emeritus. He knows the importance of service, but he has also been transparent about the barriers to the American dream that he has seen and experienced in his life. We all ran for office because we deeply care about our community. Maintaining a home, paying student loan debt, navigating health insurance costs, taking care of children and or aging parents, and managing life is a careful balancing act. We spend a great deal of time here in the People's House considering the needs of Vermonters, making sure we are serving and representing our constituents in every action we take. But we are Vermonters too, and we share many struggles with our constituents. What I'm doing today is voting yes to open the door to make service not such a hard choice. Everyone deserves a chance to sit in this room. Everyone. Therefore, I will be voting yes and hope you will join me. My vote will also be in honor of my father, Dr. Mohammed Abdel Ghani.
Member from Newport City.
Madam Speaker, may I quote a word from the Oxford Dictionary?
You may.
The Oxford Dictionary definition for privilege is a special right or advantage that a particular person or group of people has. By voting in favor of S39 for compensation and benefits for members of the Vermont General Assembly confirms that we are, in fact, a privileged group. Our constituents do not have the ability to give themselves raises or additional benefits. I therefore cannot vote in favor of S39 because it puts me in a category of privilege that I do not want to be part of. I instead prefer to serve the people of Vermont rather than the people of Vermont serving me. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Member from Stannard.
Madam Speaker, many in this body understand and know that for 35 years I worked in Vermont statutes annotated in law offices in the Northeast Kingdom. And as a public defender's office, we consider that to be community service. And the pay wasn't great. But I came from a political family where the discussion around the supper table was more often about politics than sports. And for 35 years, I often thought, you know, working in the legal trade and in the Vermont statutes, that maybe it would be really interesting to go to Montpelier and help create those statutes that I've worked in for all these years. But you know what, Madam Speaker, what held me back was, number one, the firm I worked for couldn't have done without me for that period of time. And number two, I couldn't afford to do it. I couldn't raise a family and pay my bills on a salary that we make here. And number three, health benefits. My wife didn't get benefits from her job. So it was in a situation in which I think many, many Vermonters find themselves in. Not unique, but similar to what we're hearing here today. So here in my 9th year in this state and in this state house and this body, I feel gratified to have been able to do it after I finished my career in law offices in the Northeast Kingdom. And at this point, I think that I understand the argument, and I agree that in order to recruit more people, younger people, and people that can afford to be here, like I can at this point in retirement, secure financially with health insurance. So I would suggest that I would have strong support for this bill, because we do need to mirror our communities and represent the people that and be here to represent the people that we do in our communities. Thank you.
Member from St. Johnsbury.
Madam Speaker, legislative pay is a perennial topic. I've lost count of the number of legislators who have retired or even resigned midterm due to the low pay. But one of the first I remember was a rep who quit early in the second year of my first biennium. Representative Matt Trieber was from Bellows Falls, had served 5 terms and was on the Appropriations Committee. Like most people here, he was well thought of, very competent and respected. Oh, I meant to say like everyone here. He was well thought of, very competent and respected. I had not had the occasion to get to know him very well, but he astonished me, and I think most of us, one February morning when he got up to announce his resignation. At the request of another member, who has since also retired due to the pay, his speech was journalized. It made such an impression on me that I saved it. I reread it last night. I thought he had some wise thoughts to share, some of which is germane to our conversation today. May I read some of his remarks?
You may.
Before leaving, I want to highlight a few things I've learned over my 5 terms in this body. The most important being the value of the legislature as a whole. We are in the unique position of being the branch of government that is responsible for appropriating money. And this creates certain difficulties, primarily that we must go on record to vote for increases in our own pay. Do not be afraid of this. For Vermont to thrive, we must have a strong and high-functioning legislative branch. As the most open and transparent branch of government, our strength benefits Vermonters. We were set up to be a citizen legislature. This is a fact that I've heard many speak of routinely as a point of pride. However, in recent times, it is clear that most citizens lack the financial freedom to serve in this body. For us to truly be a citizen legislature, every Vermonter who wishes to serve should have the opportunity to run and represent their district without fear of financial ruin. As long as this is not the case, we will only have the myth of a citizen legislature. It is too easy for some to seek cheap political points by denigrating bills that would make the legislature more accessible to all. I urge you to fight for a strong, effective, and truly citizen legislature. Madam Speaker, those words mean as much to me now as they did my first year here, or my second year, I guess, and I'll be voting to support this bill.
The question is, shall the bill be read a third time? Member from Fairfax.
Madam Speaker, it is no secret that I lost my job due to my service in the body, which has greatly affected my family. And I would be lying if I said this legislation wouldn't help my family. However, I cannot in good conscience vote in favor of legislation that will increase our pay while asking Vermonters to pay just a little more when they are faced with unprecedented increases in fees, taxes, as well as record inflation, all while we are facing a recession. I will be voting no on S39.
Member from Linden.
Madam Speaker, I cannot support this bill because we took an oath of office not to knowingly do anything injurious to the people, and this will add additional tax burden just so we can get paid better. So I cannot support this bill. Thank you.
The question is, shall the bill be read a third time? Member from Burlington.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Representation matters. If financial barriers alone prevent participation in this body, then our effectiveness as policymakers and the quality of our democracy are diminished. The kind of financial circumstances that would support participation in the General Assembly include things like family wealth, assets, passive income, an economic partner, things that I have, like a supportive family and a job, another job. and the ability to afford to retire. That group there represents a minority of Vermonters, and the perspectives that are absent from this room would make a tangible difference in the decisions that we make about how to govern ourselves and how to spend our resources. Even at the salary rate proposed in this piece of legislation in a couple of years, anyone who made that salary annually would qualify for even the most poverty-oriented programs in the state. If that was doubled, for example, everybody in the body would, and that was their only job, their only salary, everybody in the body would qualify for a free weatherization of their home. It's a pretty modest increase that we're asking. For me personally, as a first-generation college student and a single parent with 2 children living in Burlington, Vermont, it would mean that I would be able to decrease my hours during the legislative session to about 15 hours a week. It's a very modest proposal. I think it will improve the quality of the work that we do here if a broader diversity of Vermonters are able to join us as policymakers. And when the vote is taken, Madam Speaker, I ask that it be taken by roll. Thank you.
The member from Burlington requests that when the vote is taken, it be taken by roll. Is the member sustained? The member is sustained. When the vote is taken, it will be taken by roll. The question is, shall the bill be read a third time? Member from Waterbury.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. In 2008, when considering a run for this office, I shared this idea with my in-laws. And my mother-in-law said, well, what the hell would you want to do that for? And it was a valid question that I ask myself every 2 years. And it certainly isn't for the salary, though our family suffers with 4 months of the salary and 8 months of whatever work I can pick up along the way. But besides this being, these choices about being about us individually today here, this is about getting compensated for the quality of work that we do and who we do it for. Madam Speaker, when I come to work here, I work for Vermonters every single day. Yes, I represent my district. I take an oath to the Constitution of both the United States and of this state. And the subject matter that we all work on, I work on subject matter ranging from housing to minimum wage to discrimination law. These are all things that benefit Vermonters every single day, whether they see it or not. The bills that we've not passed, universal health care. It would be great if we had universal health care so we wouldn't even be having this conversation. But we've lost that battle over the last 15 years that I've served again and again. And yet we have Vermont Health Connect, which is an imperfect system, but somehow 97% of Vermonters are covered by health insurance or have access to it. But we don't if this is our main job. And so what happens to whether I'm going to be here in 3 or 4 years is irrelevant. What we do here, the work that we do here, is worthy of being compensated at a level that allows us to do it in the manner that we're doing it today. None of us get paid the same amount of money. I live 13 miles away. I don't stay overnight. So I don't get per diems for my rooms. I get paid for my mileage and my meals. And that mileage and meals stipend has to pay for chicken and mostaccioli dinners in October and November when I'm campaigning. So I'm going to support this bill, not for me and not for those of us sitting here, But to close off an option by not supporting this bill, to continue what we're seeing today and what we've seen for the last 200 years, where we're supposed to be volunteers in work that impacts 640,000 people every time we do it. I'm going to support this bill as a long overdue acknowledgement that the work we do here deserves to be paid at a level that we can do it at without suffering and without making any more sacrifices than we already do with our families, with our friends, and with our lives. We choose to run, there's no question, but that does not mean it has to be volunteer work or quasi-volunteer work. And even these modest increases that are proposed will not make us live better in the long run, but it will make this more available for people who make the same choices that we've made. Thank you.
Member from Orwell.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I rise in support of this bill. And I rise in support of it because I think about why I'm able to be here, and I'm able to be here because my wife has a good paying job with health insurance. That's why I'm able to be standing right here, right now, and giving this speech, because my wife is at work right now making money that can cover our bills. And I would be lying, Madam Speaker, if I didn't say that my wife and I have fairly frequently had a conversation. She works in tech. And as we all know, the tech industry is not doing so great right now due to the bank failures and everything like that. And we've spoken on many occasions, what happens if she's laid off? I'm on a medication, my wife's on medication. We probably, between our two medications, costs probably $200,000 a year. They're very new, modern medications for serious diseases. We couldn't survive without her health insurance. We couldn't survive without her salary. And I think about Green Up Day that happened last Saturday, and I was volunteering at the Orwell Fire Department. We had a drop-off for Green Up Day bags, and I was helping collect tires. And a lot of people came by, and they shook my hand, and they said, "Thank you, Joe." I'm sorry, is my name. Or thank you for what you're doing. I really appreciate what you're doing up there. You're fighting for us and everything like that. And again, I can't help but to think to myself, if I lost that privilege of my wife not, losing her job and losing her health insurance, what we would have to do, we would have to make very, very, very difficult choices that very well could result in me not being able to serve in this body anymore. So one of us could have health insurance. So one of us could have the salary to be able to do this. I also think about a constituent I spoke to several months ago when I first was elected. She asked me what it was like, and we talked for a bit, and she said, "I've always thought of doing this. I've always wanted to run. I've always wanted to serve. But I can't because I can't afford it because of the pay." That's her only reason for not running, is because she has 3 young kids, and she couldn't afford to do so because of the pay. And she'd be great at this, really, really good. And so I support this bill. I'm voting yes to this bill because we need people to be here, not because they have a spouse with an income that can cover it, not because they have a retirement fund that can cover it, not because they are independently wealthy and they have generational wealth that allows them to cover it. We need real working Vermonters in this chamber talking about the difficult things Vermonters are doing. And so I support this because I want people to not, when they make a decision to run, I don't want the decision to have to be, can I afford to serve the people of Vermont? The question should be, do I want to serve the people of Vermont? Do I believe I'm capable of serving the people of my district and doing a good job of that? That should be the question, not whether I have a couple $100,000 in my bank account so I can ride this out for a couple years. Thanks, Madam Speaker.
The question is, shall the bill be read a third time? Member from St. Albans Town.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I rise today not in favor of this bill. I disagree with how the bill was handled. I disagree with how the bill was written, and I will be voting no. S39 is not going to fix the crux of what the issue is, that we're away from work for 5 months. I have a second job. I have 2 young kids. When I started here, my kids were 4 and 2. They're now 8 and 6. and we make do. My wife helps out a lot. My support systems help out a lot. I have to work a second job, but I also serve on boards and coach, and we make things work because that's what Vermonters do. We make situations work. I am a public servant. I am not a career politician, and I don't want to make myself a career politician because we are serving in a citizen legislature. We are doing Vermont a huge disservice this year by making it more affordable every single day. Or more unaffordable, excuse me, every single day. Kind of changes the argument there. I sound like a broken record with this one, but we have raised DMV fees $22 million, $400 million in our base budget, which is about a 13% increase, $80 million in new property taxes. And the way we say you're welcome to our constituents is to give ourselves a pat on the back and a 50% pay increase. I too, like the member from Chittenden had mentioned, can think of many other ways that $4 to $5 million can go, including being spent on exempting military pensions, childcare, mental health services, workforce development, housing those experiencing homelessness, schools, school meals, the list goes on and on. But I can't go home to my constituents and say, yeah, we just, increased all these taxes and fees on you this year, but we gave ourselves a pay raise. So I will be voting no, and I will urge the body to do the same. Thank you.
The question is, shall the bill be read a third time? Are you ready for the question? If so, will the clerk please call the roll?
Andrews of Westford. Andriano of Orwell.
2 minutes. And members kindly take their seats. Will the House please come to order? I would like to remind members that we are in the middle of a roll call vote. Members and guests are prohibited from using computers, phones, or any type of electronic device. Please refrain from the passing of notes and conversations during a roll call. When the clerk calls your name, please answer in a loud and clear voice so the clerk can accurately record your vote. The question is, shall the bill be read a third time? Will the clerk please continue to call the roll?
Anthony Berry City. Harrison of Weathersfield. Arsenault of Williston. Austin of Colchester. Bartholomew of Heartland. Bartley of Fairfax. Beck of St. Johnsbury. Burbeck of Winooski. Byrong of Virgins. Black of Essex. Bloomley of Burlington. Bongarts of Manchester. Boslin of Westminster. Boyden of Cambridge. Brady of Williston. Brannigan of Georgia. Brennan of Colchester. Brown of Richmond. Brownell of Pownell. Bromstead of Shelburne. Burdett of West Rutland, thank you. Burke of Brattleboro. Burrows of West Windsor. Buss of Woodstock. Campbell of St. Johnsbury. Canfield of Fairhaven. Carpenter of Hyde Park. Carroll of Bennington. Casey of Montpelier. Chapin of East Montpelier. Chase of Chester. Chase of Colchester. Chestnut Tangerman of Middletown Springs. Christie of Hartford. Sheena of Burlington. Clifford of Rutland City. Coffey of Guilford. Cole of Hartford. Conlon of Cornwall. Corcoran of Bennington. Cordes of Lincoln. DeMar of Enosburg. Demereux of Corinth. Dickinson of St. Albans Town. Dodge of Essex. Dolan of Essex Junction. Dolan of Waitsfield. Donahue of Northfield. Durfee of Shaftesbury. Elder of Starksboro. Emmons of Springfield. Farley's Rubio of Barnet. Galfetti of Berrytown. Garifano of Essex. Goldman of Rockingham. Ghostland of Northfield. Graham of Williamstown. Granding of Jericho. Gregoire of Fairfield. Hango of Berkshire. Harrison of Chittenden. Hedrick of Burlington. Higley of Lowell. Holcomb of Norwich. Hooper of Randolph. Hooper of Burlington. Houghton of Essex Junction. Howard of Rutland City. Hyman of South Burlington. James of Manchester. Jerome of Brandon. Kornheiser of Brattleboro. Krasnow of South Burlington. Labor of Morgan. LaBounty of Linden. Lally of Shelburne. Lalone of South Burlington. Lamont of Morristown. Lanford of Virgins. LaRush of Franklin. Levitt of Grand Isle. Lipsky of Stowe. Logan of Burlington. Long of Newfane. McGuire of Rutland City. Marcotte of Coventry. Maslin of Thetford. Matos of Milton. McCann of Montpelier. McCarthy of St. Albans City. McCoy of Pulteney. McFawn of Berrytown. McGill of Bridport. Mahaly of Calais. Minier of South Burlington. Morgan of Milton. Morse of Springfield. Morrissey of Bennington. Rowicki of Putney. Mulvaney Stanek of Burlington. Nicole of Ludlow. Knott of Rutland City. Noyes of Wolcott. Nugent of South Burlington. O'Brien of Tunbridge. Odie of Burlington. Oliver of Sheldon. Page of Newport City. Payala of Londonderry. Parsons of Newberry. Pat of Worcester. Pearl of Danville. Peterson of Clarendon. Pouch of Heinsberg. Priestley of Bradford. Rachelson of Burlington. Rice of Dorset. Roberts of Halifax. Samus of Castleton. Sakowitz of Randolph. Shai of Middlebury. Shaw of Pittsford. Sheldon of Middlebury. Sibilia of Dover. Sims of Craftsbury. Small of Winooski. Smith of Derby. Squirrel of Underhill. Stebbins of Burlington. Stevens of Waterbury. Stone of Burlington. Supernon of Barnard. Taylor of Milton. Taylor of Colchester. Templeman of Brownington. Toledo of Brattleboro. Toof of St. Albans Town. Torrey of Moortown. Troyano of Stannard. Walker of Swanton. Waters Evans of Charlotte. White of Bethel. Whitman of Bennington. Williamsbury City. Williams of Granby. Wilson of Linden. Wood of Waterbury. Andrews of Westford. Brownell of Panel. Pearl of Danville. Samus of Castleton.
For purpose of explanation, member from Virgins.
Madam Speaker, my yes vote today is on behalf of past members who found this role to be too financially burdensome to continue serving. These friends and colleagues who, as they moved on from this body, most of them in their 20s, 30s, and 40s, most with tears in their eyes, pleaded with us to make serving in this legislature financially possible. My yes vote today is also for our future legislators and their ability to serve with a reasonable sense of financial stability.
Member from Burlington.
There will never be a good time to address the issue of legislative compensation. The topic will always be understood by some as self-serving. I'm voting yes because it is the necessary thing to do for this body, for the next waves of legislators who will take our places in these wildly uncomfortable seats.
Member from Cambridge.
No matter how strong the passion for service, pay and benefits make the legislature inaccessible to many of Vermonters who are not retired or independently wealthy. Our legislative structure must modernize if we want a truly representative government that Vermonters deserve.
Member from Richmond.
Madam Speaker, I voted yes in strong support of this bill. For this body to truly function as the people's house, it needs to reflect the diversity of Vermonters we represent and be accessible to those who want to serve regardless of their economic circumstances.
Member from Chester.
Madam Speaker, the General Assembly of Vermont is an integral part of our history and democracy. There is a strong commitment and a universal sacrifice that each and every one of us makes to be here to represent our communities. I understand that I am the steward of seat 42, and my vote today is for the future occupants of this seat. It is my hope that this body will be rich with diversity. S39 is an investment in our future legislatures and is a step forward fully acknowledging and valuing the valuable work, the vital work that is done under the dome by the General Assembly of Vermont. Thank you.
Member from Rockingham.
Madam Speaker, it has been an honor and a privilege to represent my constituents in this House for the last 3 years. Being a legislator confers respect because of what the position means. The position means working for constituents and Vermonters to make their lives better. These responsibilities occur throughout the year. But this position is not accessible to many due to the structure of the partial year schedule, inadequate compensation, and lack of access to health care. I voted yes for S39 because I want a legislature that is much more accessible to a more diverse group of Vermonters, younger people, people with lower incomes, and people with different backgrounds. Fair compensation for the important work we do representing Vermonters in Montpelier, as well as the year-round support we give to constituents, is a step in acknowledging the importance of the position and supporting those who come after us.
Member from Rutland City.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. In my 5 years here, I've been disappointed to watch several representatives from multiple parties arrive, begin to make an impact for their communities, but then decide they couldn't remain in office because they simply could not afford to do so. These representatives were primarily younger, working age, raising families. Without an increase in legislative pay, we silenced the voices of thousands of Vermonters. We essentially locked the doors of the State House to people whose voices would be extremely valuable as we work to best serve all Vermonters.
Member from Newbury.
Morally, I cannot support this bill. To offset the burden of this session's tax and fee increases, we're raising the salaries for ourselves. Better luck next time, Vermonters.
Member from Heinsberg.
Madam Speaker, when I considered running for the legislature, I did not have to contend with the limited salary and potential loss of income because I had already reached retirement age. This fact highlights the privilege I have, which allowed me to enter the election. Economic privilege should not be a primary qualification for those who consider service in this body. I supported this bill so that our State House doors will be opened wider and enable more of our fellow citizens who have a desire to serve. This bill will help bring back the original intent of our state constitution, to have our government representatives truly represent all our citizens.
Member from Burlington.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Public service shouldn't equate to poverty. We don't pay the governor or other state public servants so poorly and fail to give them any benefits. Being a state representative and holding a job or jobs isn't easy, as I and so many other current and former legislators have experienced. Working every night, weekends, and lunch breaks isn't sustainable. It is equally difficult to seek a job when you're a legislator. When the potential employer notes that you are a legislator and asks either, how is that going to work, or simply doesn't pursue your application. This bill isn't going to pay legislators wildly high salaries, but it will make a difference.
Member from Burlington.
Madam Speaker, I voted yes because I pledged to myself and to my constituents that I would step into places of vulnerability to speak truth, to improve access, and most importantly, to uplift and make room for those who are usually not heard.
Member from Bennington.
Madam Speaker, a Vermonter's service in elected office should be determined by their ability to be elected by their constituents, not their personal finances. Too many Vermonters are excluded from serving in the legislature because of their inability to afford being a state representative. This is bad design for participant democracy. I vote yes.
Member from Berry City.
Madam Speaker, I vote yes on S39 for those who are barred from these halls by privilege's absence. Let us enable those who come after us the capacity to serve or otherwise they could not afford to do so. Let them knock down that door.
Member from St. Albans Town.
Madam Speaker, may I explain my vote?
You may.
Madam Speaker, I vote no because the audacity it takes to raise our pay by 50% while simultaneously raising our budget by 13% and numerous taxes and fees is unconscionable.
Member from Northfield.
Madam Speaker, may I explain my vote?
You may.
Madam Speaker, rushing to raise pay and benefits in statute to, quote, make progress, end quote, for 2025, prior to hearing from a study due back in 2024 that may propose yet further pay and benefit increases is disingenuous to the extreme.
Member from Derby.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I voted no today.
Do you wish to explain your vote, member?
May I explain my vote?
You may.
Thank you. I truly hope that the voters of Vermont will remember this day. I hope they remember who gave themselves a full-time job and a raise at their expense. This is an embarrassment. Shame on all of you. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Member from Middletown Springs.
May I explain my vote?
You may.
Madam Speaker, it is a privilege to serve in this body, and it is also out of reach for too many. I vote yes to provide others the possibility of this service.
Members, please listen to the results of your vote. Those voting yes, 102. Those voting no, 44. The ayes have it, and third reading is ordered. Members, we have two more bills left this evening, early evening. I don't know what time it is. Next will be House Bill 493, which I understand is going to be a motion to postpone one day, and then we'll be taking up off the notice calendar House Resolution 11. With that, House Bill 493 is an act relating to capital construction and state bonding. Member from Springfield.
Madam Speaker, I move we postpone action for one legislative day.
You have heard the motion. Are you ready for the question? If so, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed, please say nay. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it, and you have postponed action on House Bill 493 for one legislative day. Now, member from Poultney, can you please offer us a motion to suspend our rules to take up for immediate consideration off the notice calendar House Resolution 11, which is a House resolution relating to establishing the Special Committee on Impeachment Inquiry and granting it investigatory powers.
Madam Speaker, I make a motion to suspend rules to take up off the notice calendar for immediate consideration H.R. 11.
You have heard the motion. Are you ready for the question? If so, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed, please say nay. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it, and you have suspended our rules to take up House Resolution 11 for immediate consideration. House Resolution 11 is a House resolution relating to establishing the Special Committee on Impeachment Inquiry and granting it investigatory powers. The resolution was treated as a bill and referred to the Committee on Government Operations and Military Affairs, which recommends that the resolution be amended as printed in today's notice calendar. The member from St. Albans City, Representative McCarthy, will speak for the committee, and then carrying an appropriation, the resolution was referred to the Committee on Appropriations, which recommends that the resolution ought to be adopted when amended as recommended by the Committee on Government Operations and Military Affairs. The member from Chittenden, Representative Harrison, will speak for that committee. Please listen to the second reading of the resolution.
H.R. 11, House Resolution relating to establishing the Special Committee on Impeachment Inquiry and granting it investigatory powers.
Member from St. Albans City.
Madam Speaker, members can find H.R. 11 and the small amendment offered by the House Committee on Government Operations and Military Affairs on our committee's webpage. The amendment is also printed in today's calendar on page 3446. The Vermont Constitution establishes the offices of sheriff and state's attorney. These are independent executive judicial offices. This prevents the General Assembly from adopting regulatory processes that could provide due process for the suspension or removal of a county official in the event of gross misconduct, violation of the public trust, or criminal acts. As the body knows from our consideration of S-17, the House Committee on Government Operations and Military Affairs has been considering reforms to the office of sheriff. That work began in response to past and currently serving elected sheriffs with questionable behavior that ranged from the unprofessional to the criminal, depending on the case. We found that the Constitution provides one remedy for the General Assembly when serious issues arise with elected officials. In our powers under Section 14 of the Vermont Constitution, the House may impeach, quote, state criminals. Madam Speaker, may I read from the Constitution of the state of Vermont?
You may.
Section 57, the House of Representatives shall have the power to order impeachments, which shall in all cases be by a vote of 2/3 of its members. Section 58, every officer of state, whether judicial or executive, shall be liable to be impeached by the House of Representatives, either when in office or after resignation or removal from maladministration. The Senate shall have the sole power of trying and deciding upon all impeachments. When sitting for that purpose, they shall be on oath or affirmation, and no person shall be convicted without the concurrence of 2/3 of the members present. Judgment in cases of impeachment shall not extend further than to removal from office and disqualification to hold or enjoy any office of honor or profit or trust under this state. But the person convicted shall nevertheless be liable and subject to indictment, trial, judgment, and punishment according to law. The Constitution makes it clear that should the House impeach an official and the Senate convict, the official can be removed from the office and prevented from seeking public office in the future. And impeachment and conviction does not, however, remove the possibility of other penalties under criminal or civil law. The definition of a state criminal subject to impeachment is not the same as a criminal in a judicial context. It could be a violation of public trust, oaths taken, professional regulations, ethical codes, or the commission of actual crimes. Whether conduct rises to the level of state criminal activity is similarly up to the General Assembly in the way that high crimes and misdemeanors is a political definition at the federal level. Madam Speaker, the people of Franklin County and all Vermonters deserve to have confidence in their law enforcement leaders. House Resolution 11 would authorize a special committee on impeachment inquiry made up of 7 members who shall not be all of the same party to look into allegations and charges that have been made in 2 cases. These cases would be investigated separately to determine if impeachment is warranted. If the special committee drafts articles of impeachment, a 2/3 vote of the members of the House is required to approve the articles and move to a trial in the Senate. In the Senate, a 2/3 vote would be required to convict. The first case in the resolution that the special committee will investigate is that of Franklin County State's Attorney John Lavoie. A report released recently by the Department of State's Attorneys and Sheriffs included multiple substantiated allegations of serious workplace harassment, comments made against multiple protected classes, and inappropriate contact with employees in the state's attorney's office. The second case the special committee is authorized to investigate under H.R. 11 involves Franklin County Sheriff John Grismore. The sheriff is currently facing a charge for simple assault of a detainee, a Vermont State Police investigation into financial practices uncovered in a regular audit of the office, and other complaints. H.R. 11 authorizes the special committee to investigate each of these officials to see if articles of impeachment are warranted. It does not presuppose any outcome or finding. It empowers the special committee to subpoena witnesses, get support for investigations, to meet during adjournment, and when amended by the instance of amendment found in the calendar today, to adopt its own rules and procedures. The special committee shall report to the resolution articles of impeachment or other recommendations as the special committee deems proper. Madam Speaker, we do not recommend taking this first step toward impeachment lightly. I have heard from many people in my community and throughout Franklin County who are deeply troubled by the reported behavior of the state's attorney and the charges and investigation faced by the sheriff. I worry that in our current age, there is a lack of accountability for elected officials and other powerful people in our society. There is a sense that the individual is more important than the institution in too many cases. Too often, those who commit violation of a public trust choose to ride out the public relations storm, decry investigations as partisan, which has already happened in one of these cases, or just wait for the news cycle to pass and for voters to forget. We need H.R. 11 so that the General Assembly can exercise its constitutional power to determine if articles of impeachment should be presented to the House in either, both, or neither of these cases. The committee heard from the Director and Chief Counsel of the Office of Legislative Counsel, the Clerk of the House, here at the Vermont House of Representatives. Your House Committee on Government Operations and Military Affairs voted to recommend that the body adopt the resolution on a vote of 12-0, and we ask for your support.
And now speaking for the Committee on Appropriations, member from Chittenden.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. The House Committee on Appropriations heard an overview of the resolution from Legislative Counsel. We also consulted with our Joint Fiscal Office and have been assured there are enough carry-forward funds in the legislative budget to cover anticipated per diems for the Special Committee on Impeachment and possible investigative costs. Committee vote on the resolution was 11-0-1 and urged the body's adoption. Thank you.
The question is, shall the resolution be amended as recommended by the Committee on Government Operations and Military Affairs? Are you ready for the question? If so, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed, please say nay. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it, and you have amended the resolution. Now the question is, shall the resolution be read a third time? Are you ready for that question? If so, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed, please say nay. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it, and third reading is ordered. Member from Poultney, earlier today we concurred in the Senate proposals of amendment on two Senate bills. They are Senate Bill 17, which is an act relating to sheriff reforms, and Senate Bill 99, which is an act relating to miscellaneous changes and laws related to vehicles. Can you please offer us a motion to suspend our rules to message our action on Senate Bill 17 and Senate Bill 99 to the Senate forthwith?
Madam Speaker, I make a motion to suspend rules in order to message our actions on S17 and S99 to the Senate forthwith.
You have heard the motion. Are you ready for the question? If so, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed, please say nay. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it, and you have suspended our rules to message our action on Senate Bill 17 and Senate Bill 99 to the Senate forthwith. Members, that completes the orders of the day. Members, we have a couple of bill referrals here, or just one. A bill was reported out of a committee during our recess that requires a referral to a money committee pursuant to House Rule 35A. Pending its entry on the notice calendar, House Bill 517 is an act relating to approval of the dissolution of the Duxbury-Moortown Fire District Number 1. The bill was reported out of the Committee on Government Operations and Military Affairs this afternoon, and materially affecting the revenues of one or more municipalities. The bill is referred to the Committee on Ways and Means. Are there any announcements? Member from Norwich.
Madam Speaker, I noticed up in the balcony, I have a constituent who loves the democratic process so much. She's been here all afternoon. I asked her about S39, and she said that if we passed it, it would allow different people to get elected. Since she's my constituent, I assume she's speaking about me. She is a and I look forward to having her run against me. But no, she is a longtime veteran of an activist who's been working to expand women's rights and LGBTQ rights in Florida, nationally, and in our great state of Vermont. So please join me in welcoming Lisa Talmadge.
Will the guest and member from Norwich please rise and be recognized? Are there any further announcements? Member from St. Johnsbury.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I just wanted to make a correction from when I reported House Bill 492 earlier. I mistakenly said the vote was 921. The vote was 1101. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Are there any further announcements? Member from Brattleboro.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Tomorrow at noon, the Women's Caucus is going to gather on the steps of the State House to have a little social gathering and lunch. And we invite anyone who'd like to join us to join us. It's supposed to be a beautiful day, and we can celebrate the end of a session. Almost. Thank you.
Are there any further announcements? Seeing none, member from Poultney, can you please offer us a motion to adjourn until Thursday, May 11th at 10 a.m.?
Madam Speaker, I make a motion this body stand in adjournment until Thursday, May 11th, 2023 at 10 a.m.
You have heard the motion. Are you ready for the question? If so, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed, please say nay. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it, and this body stands in adjournment until tomorrow at 10 a.m.